What's up, Taiwan? I'm Louise with news from here in Taiwan and around the world. Thank you for joining me. Taiwan's former President Ma Ying-jeou has caused controversy by saying unification with China would be acceptable under certain conditions. And he's called on Taiwan to trust China's leader, Xi Jinping. John Van Trieste reports.
With just 2 days to go until Taiwan elects its next leader, a former president is getting all the attention. Ma Ying-jeou's given an interview with Germany's DW News on Taiwan's strained ties with China, and it's proving divisive at a sensitive time. Ma has long supported improving relations with China, a country that rejects Taiwan's self-rule. His time as president saw a big easing of tensions between the countries, but his views on China were not popular and helped sink his approval into the single digits. And there are signs Ma's decision to speak his mind again now, just ahead of an election, is making his own party uneasy. First, Ma told DW that Taiwan should trust Chinese President Xi Jinping. But last year, Taiwan's top research institute found only 9% of Taiwan's people think China's trustworthy. Ma also said eventual unification with China is enshrined in Taiwan's constitution. He said it could happen, if done peacefully and democratically. But last year, National Zhengzhou University's annual poll on the issue found only 12% want that. Ma's party, the Kuomintang, is distancing itself from these remarks, even though warmer ties with China is a party goal. Kuomintang candidate Hou Youyi says his China policy would look different.
马前总统这一番想法跟我们有些不一样。我从以前到现在都是主张3D 战略，一就是遏制，二遏制就是要加强国防军备，提升自我保卫能力；二就是对话，三就是交流。尤其我对大陆的意图从来没有存在不切实际的想法。
Hou's running mate is also distancing himself from Ma's views.
马英九是前总统嘛，那就是都已经是10几年以前的事情了哈，所以马英九的讲法也不代表侯友宜的讲法。互信是很重要的了哈，如果你都不信任，那你还谈什么呢哈？但这个信任也不是无条件的信任了。
And while there's little time left to sway voters, the ruling Democratic Progressive Party, Taiwan's more China-wary party, is taking advantage of Ma's interview. At a campaign stop Wednesday, its candidate, Lai Ching-te, asked the crowd who they trust more, Xi Jinping or themselves. And he hit out at China more generally.
如果让中国介入成功，台湾的民主就荡然无存。同时呢，我们未来选的就不再是总统，而只是特首而已。
While candidates in this election have focused on other issues, from housing to raising Taiwan's birth rate, in Taiwanese politics, China is never far away, and Ma's interview has brought it back to the surface. John Su and John Van Trieste for TaiwanPlus.
Taiwan is accusing China of using trade as a weapon. That's after Beijing announced it's considering ending tariff reductions on more Taiwanese imports. China is looking at suspending preferential tariff rates on agricultural, machinery and textile products that fall under a 2010 trade deal called ECFA. Taiwan has condemned the move, saying China is using its economy to undermine Saturday's elections. In January, Beijing cancelled tariff relief on 12 chemical imports from Taiwan. For more on China's trade-related actions against Taiwan, our reporter Jeremy Olivier spoke to Gary Ng, a senior economist at Natixis.
This new announcement from China comes just days before Taiwan's elections on January 13th. Is Beijing trying to send a message here? And will this have a measurable enough impact on Taiwan's economy to potentially sway voters?
Well, for now, I would say the impact will probably be rather minimal because if you look at the sectors that are being targeted, first, they are quite small from the economic perspective. Second, even though there could be some implication on these sectors by itself, it's likely that some of the voters will want to, change the ruling parties anyways. From the macro level, I do not think that this is strong enough to revert the whole sentiment about greater sanction on export that will actually affect Taiwan's economy in general.
This new announcement also follows Beijing's suspension of tariff reductions on a dozen chemical imports from Taiwan that started at the beginning of January. Yet it hasn't gone so far as to target Taiwan's tech products. So why not?
China still has quite a large reliance on certain type of tech component from Taiwan, and targeting the ICT sectors by itself will probably even cause a greater spillover effect, not only on the global supply chain, but also on its own supply chain as well. And second, compared to some of the other products like chemical or metals, agricultural products, actually tech products are covered by another agreement, which is called the Information Technology Agreement under the WTO mechanism. It will mean that Beijing will find it harder to change any related tariff related to those ICT products.
So cross-strait trade has been declining over the past several years. Originally, Taiwan sent around 40% of its total exports to China. That's now dropped to around 35%. So where has that trade been going, and are we likely to see more of this diversion in the future?
I think the major driver for this change of the trade pattern comes from two factors. The first is, of course, if you look at the situation in China right now, there are higher labor costs, land costs has been elevated, and basically it's not as cheap to produce in China nowadays versus some of the emerging market like Vietnam or Philippines and etc. in ASEAN or even India. But of course, geopolitics also matter, and if you look at Taiwan's export order structure, we actually see that the US is actually the largest contributor, which basically means that if we look at it from the global level, if US firms or the US government are pushing for this de-risking approach that require the supply chain to move away from China towards other countries, then Taiwan supply will simply need to follow.
That was Natixis senior economist Gary Ng speaking with reporter Jeremy Olivier. The main opposition party ticket has pledged a new kind of leadership, different from its traditional pro-China roots. The Kuomintang is trying to win back the presidency by recognizing that more of the same will not do. Joyce Sung reports.
The main opposition contenders for Taiwan's top office have come out in full force in the final days leading up to an election that may well shift of already tense U.S. and China relations and also regional order. The KMT's presidential candidate Hou You-yi and vice presidential candidate Cao Cao were largely questioned on China and their approach to Beijing's rejection of Taiwanese sovereignty. The two have had to mostly answer for the KMT's long history of being more pro-China, but Hou here has recognized that we're facing a different China. It's a different time. And so his priority is actually to strengthen Taiwan's national defense and to deter Beijing from using force. Now, Hou has also pledged that he's putting forward a new and more current KMT to serve the wishes of the Taiwanese people to maintain the status quo of political autonomy and peace.
其实我们两个是跟以前的传统的国民党可能有一点点大家不一样，很多的想法。所以我回头过来我们再讲嘛，时空环境不一样。我们两位从来对中共的意图我们从来没有不切实际的一个想法。
沟通交流是很重要的，我们的民主制度也是最重要的。当然，国防很重要，要准备。但是你光靠国防，说实话，你只是给他一个严重的打击。
Now, Hou's also claimed that under the ruling Democratic Progressive Party, Taiwan has actually moved further away from the status quo and towards the risk of war. And that's why Hou says another priority is reopening good dialogue with Beijing. And he says that this is the best way to secure the status quo and maintain peace across the strait. And he's also saying that he, Cao Cao, and the KMT are the best ones positioned to achieve that. Chris Ma and Joyce Sun in New Taipei City for TaiwanPlus.
Police and members of Taiwan's armed forces are helping some of the country's most remote places cast their ballots in the elections. Jaime Ocon reports.
Police officers and volunteers in southeastern Taiwan are preparing the country to go to the polls. On January 13th, millions of people here will elect the country's next leader. And while casting a vote in big cities like Taipei and Kaohsiung might not be difficult, for smaller, less developed areas like Taidong or Orchid Island, it can be a little harder. That's why local officials are working with the military to make sure ballots and polling stations are ready before Election Day.
目前还在联系相关单位，包括海巡或者是我们空军的部分来做协助。
Volunteers are also making sure that counting and transferring the ballots on the big day will be just as smooth. Officials are hoping to install vote counting machines which count ballots with speed and accuracy.
印刷厂印的都很精准的啦，所以他们就是100张隔一个，他们就点那个大叠这样几叠，然后对报告表对准了以后，然后零数的部分再轻点一下这样子。
Saturday's elections are set to be one of the most pivotal in the country's history, with issues like security, the cost of living, and housing all at the forefront. And the influx of volunteers here shows just how people are doing their part to make sure everyone gets their voice heard. Isan Pan and Hameokan for TaiwanPlus.
With just a few days until the elections, candidates are rushing to make their final pitches to voters. It's a stressful time for everyone, Sandy Chi explains.
Supporting their presidential pick at campaign stop after campaign stop, people in Taiwan are getting ready to cast their ballots to choose the next leader of the country. With so much at stake, voters are a little on edge.
小紧张啦，对啊，毕竟是大事啊，大家都要去投票一下。
为什么要去投票？主要还是因为各个候选人的就是我支持的政党的政策比较让我觉得符合我。
However, amid all the energy, high hopes, and a chance to make their voices heard, voters are also facing a different emotion: anxiety. In recent weeks, psychiatrists in the country have seen a growing number of patients, especially young ones.
2024年，我们看到这总统跟立委选举，年轻世代的焦虑比较高，他们碰到很多他们眼前的困扰，那会有压力。比如说男生来讲，要不要当兵？ 就职很困扰，物价上涨，然后呢，兵凶战危，那要不要结婚，要不要生小孩？那这焦虑呢，在希望找出适当的候选人的时候，他就会产生一些压力。
Doctors say, in the past, the majority of those with election anxiety were older folks. But now, because of technology, younger people are feeling it too.
大概多了20%左右，晚上都不睡觉。那以前我们就觉得说他可能只是说网络成瘾，结果不是，他竟然都一直在发文章，然后或者一直在转传。
Doctors advise people experiencing election anxiety to reduce time spent on following politics and focus more on exercise and leisure activities. If the anxiety continues after the elections, they should seek medical care. Luffy Lee and Sandy Chi for TaiwanPlus.
Authorities in Ecuador are cracking down on a wave of violence spreading through the country. At least 10 people have been killed in attacks in recent days, and criminal gangs are holding more than 130 prison staff hostage. Videos on social media show the murder of police officers, car bombs going off, and the takeover of hospitals and a university. The violence began on Monday after the country's most dangerous gang leader escaped from prison. The country has declared a 2-month state of emergency. North Korean leader Kim Jong-un says South Korea is his country's principal enemy. He made the comments while visiting arms factories in the north. He accused Seoul of increasing tensions between the two sides and building up its weapons supply. Kim called for Pyongyang to increase its own military capabilities and nuclear war deterrent. This comes as the US and its allies condemn Russia for using North Korean ballistic missiles. The death toll from a powerful earthquake that struck Japan's west coast on New Year's Day has risen to 202. Rescuers are still searching for more than 100 missing in the Ishikawa prefecture, but snow is hindering efforts. More than 26,000 residents are sheltering in evacuation centres after the quake flattened homes and cut off electricity and clean water. Thank you for watching What's Up Taiwan. Finally today, it's still cold out there, so take a look at this South Korean ice fishing festival. I'm Louise Watt. Take care. I'll see you next time.